Hello and welcome to the course Developing Soft Skills and Leadership through Indian Knowledge System. In today's lecture, we shall be talking about leadership in ancient India, particularly through the concepts and framework such as Raja-Dharma and Lokasangraha. Before we begin with before we delve deeper into this concept of leadership in ancient India, let's first of all ask a very basic question as to who is a leader or who do you call a leader? What are the specific qualities that define a leader? Right. So, that is a basic question we shall be engaging in first of all. That means, for the purpose of this particular lecture, we shall be defining and setting up the goal as to how we are going to engage deeply in this concept of leadership. And then we shall explore how Indian leadership, Indian knowledge system offers the specific framework of leadership which is quite timeless and applies to the modern times, and it presents a very specific framework to understand modern leadership. Right. So, if we closely analyze this concept of leadership, we shall be in a position to find out that leadership in modern times particularly is one of the most misunderstood concepts. Why? Because we always associate leadership with power and privilege, somebody who leads from the front, somebody who is always in authority, right. So, this is how we understand, or this is precisely what is our understanding of political leadership and corporate leadership is. But if we look deeper into it, and particularly if we try to approach this concept of leadership through Indian knowledge system, we would probably find out that leadership is not a privilege. It is not about being in charge. It is a very greater responsibility. It is an awesome responsibility of taking care of the people around you, how empathetically you think about the people, how precisely you are taking care of the people around you, right. So, it seems to be a very greater responsibility. Maybe at times there could be cases where you may not be liking the people around you, or people may not be cooperating with you, and for that I personally like this particular analogy between leadership and parenting, because at times even your kids do not listen to you, but you tirelessly try to help them and make sure that they grow. So, this kind of relationship should be there between a leader and the teammates. So, if we look at a very definition of leadership that I have devised for the purpose of this particular lecture, particularly the modern understanding of the leadership, it defines like leadership in the modern context may be referred to be a kind of an ability where you are in a position to influence the others, guide your teammates and your subordinates, and be in a position to inspire individuals or group of individuals for a purpose in mind to achieve shared goals while fostering the growth which is the growth of all, and also inspiring them to do some kind of innovation with particular position of ethical responsibility. This is how the modern leadership is largely defined. It has certain kind of characteristics that are always being looked forward in a modern leader. These characteristics may be like having certain kind of vision to lead the team and be in a position to have strategic thinking for a particular purpose. The leader must also display some kind of emotional intelligence and be empathetic in his approach. And do you think that leader is in a position to ethically bring about decision making, and is he in a position to collaborate and empower the entire team? In a nutshell, that if we try to look at the entire definitions and try to analyze these definitions, we find that we are focusing on a service oriented leadership, where leadership is not being in a power and privilege, rather with a sense of serving others. This is precisely how we are looking at the concept of leadership. So far as the Indian knowledge system is concerned, Indian knowledge system offers a very awesome definition of and frameworks and models of leadership, which is quite timeless and suits a lot to the challenges of modern leaderships. And these Indian traditions conceptualize leadership as duty driven and service oriented, right. This is how leadership, if you analyze certain cases, certain models of Indian leadership, you would probably find that the people are demonstrating the leadership frameworks which are dharmic. Dharmic means duty driven. Let me clarify here is that dharma is not religion as it is understood in the Western world. Dharma is the duty of an individual. So, leadership is largely being presented by Lord Ram or Krishna or Bhishma or many other models from Indian knowledge system as a duty driven concept of leadership, where they place service first and then they serve their own people. So, this concept is basically rooted in the concept of ethical and spiritual principles, and these could be dharma. That means, do you have the leaders must display the moral responsibility and righteous conduct. This is in fact binded on the leaders, that they must be in a position to show moral responsibility and righteous conduct. Lord Krishna in the texts like Gita has focused on selfless actions called Nishkama Karma, where the personal gains are put behind while the collective and universal welfare and well-being is positioned first. This is called Nishkama Karma. So, leadership is in ancient India, in the Indian knowledge system, is always placed as not talking about the personal prosperity, individual prosperity, rather the collective well-being of all. And in Indian knowledge system, the leadership is also not associated with particular small team goals, but rather every decision a leader takes has wider consequences, and it is always associated with society at large. So, every action that any leader at any point of time takes, that has a wider consequence called social consequences. So we must let me talk about the fact that leadership is not very narrow understanding, narrow conduct. Rather, it's a very universal, very social in nature, ethical and moral at the same time. And finally, it talks about Lokasangraha. The leadership qualities in Indian knowledge system talk about Lokasangraha, which is a very general conduct of the leaders for the welfare and harmony of the society. So, it talks about why a particular leader should act in a particular way. That means, what should be the purpose of leadership, and the purpose of leadership should be to establish the welfare and harmony of the entire society as large. And finally, the leadership must demonstrate through service of the humanity, service of the society at large. So, this is the concept of what you call the servant leadership is demonstrated by many models. I shall be talking in detail about this particular fact, right. So, if we try to converge the modern leadership theory and Indian knowledge system, you would find that the idea of true leadership that emerges out of the required modern leadership and the Indian knowledge system is not domination, but it is a responsibility, and it is very mandatory service that promotes collective well-being and ethical progress. This is how we must define the entire idea of leadership collectively. And now we are going to demonstrate the Indian knowledge, the model of leadership in the Indian knowledge system through two major concepts. One is called Raja-Dharma and the other is Lokasangraha. Raj-Dharma is the duty of the leader or duty of the Raja. Raja is a kind of an equivalent of modern leader, right, and this is the duty of Raja, or what you call the king, and what he should do. Raja-Dharma defines as to what should a leader do or what should a king do, right, and that Lokasangraha is why should a king or a leader must act in a particular way. So, it talks about, Rajdharma talks about whatness of the leadership, while Lokasangraha talks about whyness of leadership. What is the the duty of the leader, and Lokasangraha is the ultimate purpose of the leader. And what is Lokasangraha is establishing the welfare and harmony of all the subject of the king and all the teammates of the modern leaders, right. So, what should be the purpose of the leadership? That is to bring about harmony and collective well-being and welfare of the entire subject, entire team. So, we shall be approaching this concept of leadership through these two concepts called Raja-Dharma and Lokasangraha. If we closely look at this concept called Raja-Dharma, that refers to the moral and administrative duties of a ruler and employs core values such as justice and fairness. It demonstrates people-centered leadership, which brings about strategic thinking and maintaining social order. So, this is a definition of Raj-Dharma. We shall look at different models through which we shall demonstrate the idea of what you call Raja-Dharma. In Mahabharata, Udyog Parv, it is defined Dharmen Raja Prithivim Rakshet, Dharmen Paripalet, Dharmanev Pragya Sarvo Rajet Prithvi Pipati. That means the king must protect the earth through dharma. So, the foremost duty of a leader that has been prescribed here is that it must be in a position to protect not only one particular individual, but the entire earth that is commanded by the king, and that protection must come from dharma. Dharma means the duty of the Raja. The king must take it as a duty to protect all the people who have been invested in him. By dharma he must govern, and his government must be established by dharma. And through righteousness the ruler brings prosperity and satisfaction to his people. And if the king performs his work with righteousness, and probably the people of the kingdom are quite satisfied. So, if you can extend this entire notion of the ruling through duty, ruling through dharma to the modern leadership, means you must ensure the prosperity and satisfaction of your people by bringing about righteous actions, and you must consider it as your duty to protect the interests of each and every one of your teammates. And this particular concept may be employed to understand the modern leadership insights such as the ethical governance, the idea of justice and responsibility towards citizen. So, the king holds, or the leader holds, a very clear responsibility towards citizen for bringing about ethical governance and justice. Similarly, if you look at Kautilya's Arthashastra, he has defined it like pragya sukhe sukham ragya prajanam cha hite hitam natma priyam hitay ragya pragyanam tu priyam hitam. He has very cleverly associated the happiness of the king or happiness of the leader with the happiness of his subjects. There is a very close association between the welfare of the leader and the welfare of the subject. Both of their welfares are associated with each other. So, what pleases the king personally is not important. So, in leadership, as a king or leader, you probably are not much important. What is important is the benefits of the people, how people are being benefited, that is of utmost importance. So, that simply gives us an idea that the model of leadership that is being prescribed here should not be centered around the leader, rather the leadership must be people centric. People should be at the core of the entire strategy or entire performance of the leader. How your policies, how your acts are bringing the benefits or growth of all the individuals, not yours. So, it is not about the individual prosperity, it is about the prosperity of what you call the larger people. So, it places at the center public welfare at the core of the entire governance. Right. So, as a king, as a leader, you must take an insight from this particular quote, that you should not place your individual happiness and individual gains, individual prosperity at the core in performing your leadership duties. Rather, you make sure that your leadership is people centric, it takes care of all individuals, and you place public welfare before the individual welfares as such. Kautilya in Arthashastra also defines tasmani tyodhito raja kuryad darshanunushasanam arthasya moolamuthanam manaraths vipare. That means, why should the king perform his duty? Because if the king should always remain active and administer the affairs of the state, diligence is the root of prosperity, while negligence leads to misfortune. So, since there is a very close association between the prosperity of the king and the prosperity of the subject, there is a very close association between the performance of the leader and the welfare of the entire teammates, and therefore, the leader should always remain active and administer all the affairs of the state personally. That means, he should always stay invested, that the state's affairs are administered in a very active manner. The leader must perform his work very diligently, because that is actually the root of the prosperity of not the one individual, but the entire subject, the entire team. And if there is an act of negligence on the part of the leader, it might lead to misfortune, and it would be a collective misfortune of the entire team in the modern sense and the entire subject in the Indian knowledge system. So, that means if you look at this particular shloka that associates the fortunes, the growth, the development of the leader and the entire subject very, very closely. Now, we look at another quote from Kamandakiya Nitisara, that means Atmanam Prathamam Raja Vinyono Papadete Tatah Putran Tatah Amatyan Tatah Sarva Praja Nrapa. That means, a king must first discipline himself, then guide his family, ministers, and finally the people. If you expect that you yourself are not disciplined, but you expect others to be disciplined, you are looking forward your teammate to perform certain kind of work, but you actually are doing nothing, probably this is not going to translate into effective leadership. I remember a very small anecdote from the life of Mahatma Gandhi. Once a mother approaches Mahatma with a small child, for counseling him that this child consumes a lot of sweets. And she appeals Mahatma that kindly make my child counsel that he should avoid eating that much of sweets. Mahatma says, okay, see me after 4 days. The mother says, okay, I'll come after 4 days. She again revisits Mahatma after 4 days, and Mahatma says, okay, little child, think about it. You shouldn't consume a lot of sweets, because it is going to affect your health, your dental health and your other kinds of health, and probably on a longer run you are going to have problem. The child was in awe with Mahatma, and he listens to him and promises that he is not going to consume sweets anymore. The mother says, okay Mahatma, you have counsel, thank you, but you should have done it 4 days back. Why did you do that after 4 days? Because it's a very general counsel that you have made. Mahatma says, I could not do that because on that day I was also till that day I was also consuming a lot of sweets. So I thought before counseling the young boy, I must discipline myself first, then the other people, then I could expect other people to listen to me. So let's learn from Mahatma that if you want anything to be done by the next person, first you discipline yourself and demonstrate that you can do it, then you can expect the other people to do the same. So that means the insights that we are taking from this sloka is that self leadership is very important before leading others. So are you presenting yourself as a role model before the before you think that other people should think that they must take counsels from you, right? So it's a kind of an emotional discipline and disciplining your character that has been presented through this particular sloka. So that means a leader must be in a position to discipline himself first, then guiding others. Now, if you look at this particular sloka, which is coming from Manusmriti, it says, Rachanad Raja Shabdyo Aham Raja Rakshati Rachita. That means the word Raja comes from the very act of protection. The king protects others and is protected by them. So it's very duty of the king to protect others, and then only he can expect that he should be respected and protected by other people. So it's a very shared and transactional kind of leadership that has been presented here. Transactional in the sense that if you are taking care of the people, people would probably take care of you. This is a very transactional kind of leadership that is being presented here. That means leadership is a responsibility of protecting others. It's a duty of safeguarding the entire society, and that's why probably you are going to win the confidence of the entire society, and society is going to take care of you, right? This is a very transactional relationship. And finally, in Manusmriti, it says, Danda Shasti Pragya Praja Sarva Danda Eva Virakshati. Law and discipline should also be practiced by the king. Law and discipline govern the people and protect them. Justice ensures order and stability in society. This is a very important concept that is being presented here. That means in the entire system of society or in the entire framework of leadership, individual is not important. What is important is rule of law. Every act should be performed in a kingdom or in a society or within a team must be based on the rule of law. No individual is important, even leader is not important. What is important is rule. So everything that should be performed within a particular team or teamwork should be based on the rule of law. Law is above individual, right? And if there is a rule of law, no individual would become important, and law also would ensure that the entire proceedings are quite fair and impartial. So you make sure, and you must learn from this concept of Indian knowledge system, that you must bring the rule of law in your conduct, and that would ensure the fair and impartial governance and leadership, right? So far what we have learned from this concept of Raja-Dharma is that the foremost duty of a king is to protect the entire subject. The rule of the duty of a leader in the modern times is to take care of the welfare of each and every teammate and to ensure that justice is being done to each and everyone in society. So we have seen that political authority invested in a king is always subordinate to dharma, that is the duty of the king, right? So it's the king should not practice political authority, but should always practice duty first, duty towards his citizens, and therefore leaders should also practice duty or not any kind of privilege and power within a particular team. It is always expected from a king to maintain justice, and if the king fails in maintaining justice, failure may destroy the leader. And the example of This comes from Pandya kingdom, where the city of Madurai has been completely devastated because the Pandya king has failed to deliver justice to a common woman called Kannagi, right. That is an Indian very old Indian city, and because the king has failed to deliver justice to that common woman, and that is why the entire city was burnt down, right. And another concept that emerges from this idea of Raja-Dharma is the protection and welfare of people should be considered as the highest form of righteousness. These are the concepts that we derive from Raja-Dharma. Now, we are moving to the next concept called Lokasangraha, right. And here Lord Krishna in his text log Bhagavad Gita chapter 3 and shloka 20 defines what he means by Lokasangraha. Karmanev hi sansidha didamastita janakadaya Lokasangraha mevapi sanspin kartubharshi. Here Lord Krishna says that rulers like King Janak performed their duties to ensure Lokasangraha. If you look at the King Janak, who is also known as Videh. Videh means somebody who is not concerned much with material prosperity, rather, and he is also not associated with much material gain, and despite this particular fact he has always performed his duty of Lokasangraha. That means maintaining all kind of social harmony and order, and this action, his actions rather, is not merely an individual duty, it has vital social consequences. So, the kind of model of leadership that emerges from King Janaka is that he is the one who has been performing Nishkama Karma. That means he is not associated with any kind of personal gain of his duty, but he is always associated making sure that his actions are resulting in greater maintenance of social harmony and order. So, he is being presented, King Janaka is being presented as the ultimate aim of a leader, right. Why should a leader perform a particular work? So, Lokasangraha in Gita, Lord Krishna argues that leaders must act because their behavior influences society. So, that talks about how leaders are always considered as role models. Yedidacharit shresthatata devataro janah. So, it means that people imitate the conduct of great individuals, and therefore, leaders must now act responsibly because their actions shape social values and behavior. In this sense, Lokasangraha establishes a very moral obligation on leadership that since they are being considered as role models in society, they must demonstrate a very ideal and moral and ethical leadership. So, the kind of concepts that we derive from this model of leadership is that the leaders guide society through examples. So, a leader must perform those kinds of work where they are being seen as role models, and they could guide societies on a righteous path, and they must maintain ethical order and must be in a position to promote collective welfare. Krishna also advises that wise people should act without attachment to personal rewards. That means that they must have a kind of an intention of benefiting society, not the personal gain. Sukta karmarne vidyavanso yatha kurvanti bharata kuryad vidyavanst tatha saktashikar lokasangraham. That means enlightened people and individuals perform their duties not out of selfish motives, but to sustain social order, right. So, they are not performing any kind of personal gain, but they are performing in order to maintain social order, and that is why Lord Krishna always prefers people whose actions have certain kind of social values, social relevance. And that is why when Arjuna asked Shri Krishna that who do you think is best amongst Karma Yogi, Jnana Yogi and Bhakti Yogi, Lord Krishna says Karma Yogi is the best, because Karma Yogi is the one who is performing his work, and that work sustains the entire social order. And that is why Karma Yogi is always better than Jnana Yogi and Bhakti Yogi, who are transcending, who are doing the benefits of their self, but not the society. So, somebody's work is having social relevance is better than others. So, from this concept of Lokasangraha, what the things that we derive is that duty should be considered over personal ambitions, and collective welfare should be considered above individual gains. Responsibility is better than having power. So, power and ambition and individual gains are not important, rather duty, collective welfare and responsibility is important for a leader. That is precisely the model that emerges from Indian knowledge system, and this is why the leader must act. So, what we have collectively learned from or we try to merge both the concept of Lokasangraha and Raja-Dharma, we find that whatness of leadership, what should a leader do is confined in this concept called Rajdharma, while Lokasangraha talks about why a leader should act in a particular way. So, Rajdharma defines in a nutshell the duties of a ruler, what should a ruler do, while Lokasangraha explains the ultimate aim of those duties of a leader, that means maintaining the welfare and the stability of society. Similarly, if you look at Raja-Dharma, it emphasizes the concepts like protection of the people, justice, performance of justice and ethical governance, which directly contributes to Lokasangraha by ensuring social harmony and public welfare. So, that way Raja-Dharma and Lokasangraha are very well connected with each other, because what the king is going to perform, what the leader is going to perform is going to ultimately decide the fate or the fortune of the teammate and society at large, right. So, therefore, a ruler following the concept of Raj-Dharma must act in a moral way, must represent moral examples, and such exemplary leadership encourages society to act responsibly, thereby supporting Lokasangraha. So, if the leader is following the concept of Raj-Dharma, it ultimately is going to transform the entire society at large, and the ultimate purpose of this should be the Lokasangraha, the harmony and welfare of all. Rajdharma requires disciplined and selfless leadership, while Lokasangraha promotes action for the collective good rather than the personal gain. And therefore, both concepts stress responsibility towards society, where the ruler's ethical conduct sustains social order and strengthens collective well-being. Now, the kinds of insights that we have derived from this Indian discussion of the leadership through Indian knowledge system, particularly the concepts like Raj-Dharma and Lokasangraha, is that it represents a model of ethical leadership, where Raj-Dharma emphasizes righteous governance and moral responsibility, and it corresponds to modern soft skills like integrity, accountability and ethical decision making in leadership. It also talks about that leadership should be people-centric, and both the concepts of Raj-Dharma and Lokasangraha stress the welfare of the people. In modern contexts, this may be aligned with the idea of empathy, inclusivity and servant leadership. So, and another thing that it presents is leading by example. It should be a role model to other people, and that is why the kind of idea that it presents is that leaders influence society. It emphasizes in the teachings of Lord Krishna, where he relates to role modeling, credibility and professional conduct, which are the key soft skills in leadership in modern times. It also presents that team harmony and social responsibility must be included in the concept of leadership. Lokasangraha, for example, focuses on maintaining social harmony and collective well-being, which reflects modern leadership qualities such as collaboration, teamwork and corporate social responsibility. Self-discipline and emotional intelligence is also may be inferred from this previous discussion. It means that Raj-Dharma requires rulers to control personal desires and act responsibly. They must place the society first and then any kind of personal desires. This parallels modern soft skills like self-management, emotional intelligence and balanced decision making. Thank you. If you have any doubts and questions, kindly let me know. Thank you.